Hello everyone and welcome to my Let's Play. Specifically, we're looking at the idea of stimulated recall in Commander Keen 1. Commander Keen is a 1990 PC platformer developed by id Software, the people who would go on to make Doom, Quake, and pretty much the entire concept of modern 3D gaming. It was originally made thanks to an engine breakthrough by John Carmack in smooth scrolling. See this? This is a book of Can't. If you've been looking at the way we move through this world, you might notice that the pickups are all positioned in a way that it's hard to accidentally pick them up in this first level. This means you've got to go out of your way to reach them, which has the side effect of creating the impression that Billy automatically wants this stuff. Billy responds positively to this stuff just being around him. Your character, Billy Blaze, is a 10-year-old super genius. He built a spaceship and came to Mars while his parents were out at dinner. This reflects in the pickups that you want to look at around you. There's lollies and there are soda, but there's also, just mixed in amongst those pickups, books of incredibly deep German philosophy. What's really funny to me about this is lots of books of Kant are worth more points, as if, because they all look like the exact same book. Billy gets, just likes collecting lots of the same book of Kant. This here is the standard galactic alphabet. It's a substitution cipher for English that id Software used throughout this game and put references of in other games. This sign here just says, "This is neat." So what are we doing here? I said at first this was an experiment in stimulated recall, which is an idea I first read about in Chapter 8 of Game Research Methods, an Overview, which was edited together by Langkoski and Bjork. The chapter in question, titled Studying Thoughts, is by Yuri Pitkanen. In research, you often have to ask someone what they did, or ask them about their experiences of doing something. Stimulated recall is a method of research that asks you to record that experience, and then use that video recording to form the foundation of the response. You let the subject watch what they did and explain what they were thinking while they were doing it. In this case, I am doing this as an experiment, as play in the same space. This video is not rigorous research. I'm just exploring this methodology, seeing what I think of it and feel about it once I've done it. It's interesting and exciting so far, as it's kind of an annotated, expanded version of a Let's Play. This is the pogo stick. It lets you jump higher. I think it's essential to finishing the game, but I'm not sure. At this point of the play experiment, I wasn't sure what I was doing, if I wanted to try and finish the game quickly and efficiently, or if I was just trying for maximum points, or if I was looking to show off something in specific. Hence that hesitation at the door. Oh, and that thing there is a Garg. We'll get into them. The premise of the game is that you, Billy Blaze, are stuck on Mars after having gone there on a jaunt while your parents were out. The planet of Mars is occupied by the Yorps and Gargs, two different kinds of slightly crap alien. That's a recurrent theme you'll find in Tom Hall's work. He really had a fondness for the slightly rubbish vision of space. There are lots of alien races in the Keenverse that are, kind of harmless but dim, rather than necessarily evil. This game was first distributed as shareware, meaning that you could get this first episode and all of the stuff contained wherein for free, and that was a great way of getting people interested in playing and owning the game. The plot as such is kind of a little bit mystery box. It's a little inexplicable as to what's going on, and there's a very clear sequel hook. If you're familiar with platformers, especially platformers of this era, you might kind of be surprised by how little surprising stuff there is here. You have a very simple key and door system. You have a gun that you can fire at things that I use very rarely in this playthrough. Most of what you can do to die is running into things or being run into by a very small number of things. While there's a lot of threats going around, the main thing that'll kill you in this early part of the game is stuff you run into because you messed up. Coming up here, we have one of our first Vorticons, who serve as a sort of pseudo-boss, and we're going to avoid them. The Vorticons are part of that sequel hook. You only see them in a small number of levels in this game, always guarding one of your important key items that you need to finish the game, and they take a lot of shots to kill, unlike everything else you have in this game. So things are usually immune to the gun, or die in one shot to the gun. The idea of something that takes multiple hits is kind of out of type. Yorps, incidentally, are harmless, and you can knock them out for a little while. When I was much younger, I remember my sister saw me shooting Yorps because they annoyed me with their shoving. And I felt very chastened when she pointed out to me that the Yorps weren't trying to harm anyone, and they were quite nice, if you looked at how they smiled at you. Ever since that, I felt really guilty about the idea of killing Yorps, and for a while there I would take a Yorp death as a run killer when I was playing this game. Gargs, on the other hand, are dicks. The Commander Keen franchise kind of kicked it off at id Software. They'd had a deal going with a company called Softdisk to release a game every 2 months. Commander Keen gave them both a structure of what to do and a kind of a mapped out plan. Commander Keen was a well they'd go back to with different engine upgrades as they continue to push what the PC could do to its limit. You gotta remember, at this time, this sort of smooth scrolling wasn't really doable on a PC. I'm not particularly au fait with the mechanical language of this kind of thing. If you want a more precise and in detail description of how Commander Keen does smooth scrolling, you want to look into the book Masters of Doom. But the whole idea of a game like this on the PC, and one that was being distributed freely, was really surprising. Dotted around the surface of Mars are a variety of different, cities. These little ones that are represented by, almost like the tombs or menhirs are particularly interesting because they imply the world sort of has a lot more intention behind it. See these totems? They're always in the symbol of a local species, a Yorp or a Garg, and they communicate to you something about the world. Now, here's where my ideas of perfect runs falls apart, because I die a lot in this level. I remember at this time I was kind of toying with the idea of making this into a perfect score version of the game, where I was trying to collect as much as I could in every level in a very smooth, elegant playthrough. Not a speed run, but just a sort of a showy, elegant, look how good I am at this game idea. I didn't want to cut any of the video. I didn't want to give you a false impression of how good I am at playing this game. So what ensued was a little embarrassing, because as you may notice, that's the exit. I can just go. And I've just avoided a Garg. And I've gotten the teddy bear. The teddy bear's a giant chunk of points, and that's just a screw up. Just straight up a screw up. You get an extra life in this game every 20,000 points, which means you can kind of keep going for a long while on a level that's giving you trouble, but it does make you a little more assiduous about picking up things that get you points. Considering that a lollipop is only, I believe, 100 points, you wind up with this sort of, tension between being pushed into... There's another death. Also, I'm not entirely sure what this level is meant to represent. It looks kind of like a gigantic cactus, which, when you look at the backgrounds and the way this game looks on the inside, it's kind of weird. The nature of Mars in the Keen setting is kind of fascinating, because for all that you go to space, you only go to Mars once. Yorps and Gargs are only in this first shareware game. Some of the things that are put in this game, you kind of get to see again, like bricks and whatnot, but every subsequent installation of Commander Keen has different behavior in it and different stuff. God, that's embarrassing. One of the things about these levels is they clearly wanted to make them bigger than they had to be. You might have noticed that all the routes through everything but the first level have left stuff behind, because there's just too much stuff to get in a timely fashion. If you wanted to pick this particular turkey clean, you could... There's a lesson to be learned about timing and foreshadowing player behavior. Because Keen's sprites are so big, it's actually... That's the extra life sound. Like I was saying, because the sprites are big, it means that you've only got so much scroll from the left and the right. The camera will default to trying to keep Keen in the middle of the screen, if you notice. That means that as you get closer to the side of the screen, the less time you have to react to anything that's coming at you off it. This can be a problem when enemies can shoot. In this game, most of the time, enemies can only attack you with their bodies. There are some things that have guns, and they will shoot at you, and those moments are usually contained fairly well. The level design in these games isn't phenomenally great, I wouldn't remark upon it as a masterclass or anything, but there's a lot of good internalization of familiar lessons. Yeah, I was sick of having any of that Garg's nonsense. And apparently I was very committed to getting the teddy bear as well. One artifact of the dawn of this game is to fire the gun, you have to shoot 2 buttons. So, when we're talking about classic things in video games, ice levels! This ice level shows that the Keen engine can handle bricks with different degrees of surface tension. These bricks here are slightly slippery. If you stop on them, you'll slide a little bit, and it can make picking up speed kind of difficult. There is, however, also just honest-to-God ice, as you can see. Ice will keep you sliding in a consistent direction, and the only way up and off the ice is by jumping. I apparently thought this was more fun. One of the advantages of using stimulated recall is that the person in question has to present a reasonable representation of reality as they record it. It's one of the unfortunate things of research involving humans is that our memories are remarkably plastic. Even very recently after you do something, your reasons for doing it can be backfilled and altered, which means sometimes you may say you did something that you did not do, and then you may justify what you did not actually do with reasons that are not true. The upshot of this is that it's sometimes very difficult to get very reliable research methods for things that have to have a subject doing something or testing something. It's experiential evidence. It's difficult to obtain cleanly. Stimulated recall means that you have at least a reliable record of what actually happened. Just a moment of respect for our extra life sound. And another teddy bear. I don't remember why I did this level specifically, which is one of the other things about stimulated recall. I'm glad I did, though, because I forgot when I went in that it has this. Garg. Up to this point, all these little shrines have had Yorps in them, and they've given helpful, sweet advice, and been nice and friendly and good, as opposed to shouting at you violently. Stimulated recall allows us to resist some of the worst mental habits, but it also gives us the chance to reflect on what we're doing in a really intricate way. You might see that sometimes a really good speedrunner or Let's Player has some particular way of analyzing or examining their own play experience. When I started playing Nuclear Throne, one of the pieces of advice I got was record your own play as much as you can, because it will show you when you are doing things that get you killed. This whole conception, this data-driven life, is one of the things that's becoming more and more possible with computers, and gets a little frustrating or creepy if you're particularly prone to anxiety. So, don't feel you need to follow it everywhere. One of the reasons I chose to use Commander Keen, for example, is because it's really easy to run Commander Keen while I'm also listening to an audiobook, which I need to do, because when you're doing this kind of PhD, you really need to just keep constantly reading or listening to books or whatnot. Anyway, another Yorp. Look for dark, hidden bricks. You've actually seen me stand on some of these a couple of times. One in the pogo room, in fact. Secrets were something that id games, and most shareware games liked to put around. It was kind of cool. The idea seemed to be that there was always something more to go back to playing the game for. It extended the lifespan of a game, even if there wasn't anything particularly exciting in the secrets. Alright. Now, if you're familiar with Commander Keen 1, you'll know that this is, technically speaking, the final level. Earlier on I mentioned how monsters in this game largely can only damage you with your body, and things that can't are usually contained. This is a lesson a lot of games of this era didn't really grasp, that if you've got something that shoots a projectile and it can shoot at you from off screen, it can randomly kill you, and that doesn't feel good. Throughout Commander Keen, these robots are dotted around, and almost always carefully contained, so that you have a place to stand, to look, and to consider how you want to solve the problem they are presenting you. As far as being the last level goes, it's easy for this one to sneak up on you. I wound up playing my way through the entirety of this game, solving every single place, looking for the components of the Bean with Bacon Mega Rocket. And it's not like the game does anything to signpost them. They're all presented just like ordinary levels, and hidden at the end is some component of the machine that you needed. This works out to gain this sense of exploration, and as a speed game actually makes it super fast. If you're into movement-based games, this is actually kind of a cool one. I recommend you check out Captain Clever, who I believe has done some speedruns of Commander Keen and a bunch of the other Apogee catalog games. Now, at one point you got the clue in one of the tunes from a Yorp ghost that said, "You will need the gun in the end, but not to shoot the Vorticon." And that's how. If you look at the components that Billy needed to reconstruct his spaceship, you needed a battery from a car, a joystick from a computer, a vacuum cleaner, which forms part of the engine, and his dad's liquor, which became part of the fuel supply. Now, with all the parts together, you go back to the Bean with Bacon Mega Rocket and head home. This whole thing has a very impish air to it. You're literally out without your parents knowing about you, and you want to try and make sure you don't get in trouble. So you've got to rush home. The fact that you're actually marooned on actual Mars isn't seen as a problem. I'll just let this final cutscene play out without commentary. And that's that. That's a little experiment in stimulated recall. I hope it was at least a little bit interesting. I think it's very important when you get these ideas presented to you that you do something to play with them. Playing with ideas is how we become familiar with them.